On January 30th, 1972, a chilling incident known as Bloody Sunday occurred. A civil rights demonstration took place in the city of Derry in Northern Ireland, and things turned incredibly violent. The British military supposedly saw these unarmed protesters as a threat and opened fire, killing 13 and injuring at least 15 others, with one of them dying afterward. It marks one of the most horrific incidents in the conflict in Northern Ireland, known as the Troubles. This is a simplified account of what happened, but it's the gist of what Paul McCartney and John Lennon would have read in the news the very next day. Like many Liverpudlians, all four Beatles had Irish heritage, and in the aftermath of Bloody Sunday, we would see how much their Irish ancestry meant to them. In one of Ireland's darkest hours, it was the Beatles, or the former Beatles at this stage, who lent their voice, and not one but two songs were written by former Beatles about this incident. Prior to Bloody Sunday, John was already involved with global protest movements. The Vietnam War was the most pressing, but the situation in Northern Ireland was also getting pretty worrying. In 1969, the British Army launched Operation Banner, where British troops were sent to patrol Northern Ireland. They were placed primarily to curb civil unrest from the nationalist community, who were protesting discrimination in areas like housing, jobs, and others. And before John had written his own song about Bloody Sunday, he had already written a song about the Troubles called The Luck of the Irish, which was written a few months before Bloody Sunday occurred. The Beatles had recently broken up, so this song was performed by John and his wife, Yoko Ono. The song turns the cliché on its head and argues that the Irish, historically, are deeply unlucky. The lyrics open with, "If you had the luck of the Irish, you'd be sorry and wish you were dead. You should have the luck of the Irish, and you'd wish you was English instead." John and Yoko went on to perform this track live in the aftermath of Bloody Sunday and performed the song at a protest outside the New York offices of the British flag-carrying airline British Airways, which was owned by the British government at the time. Ultimately, John Lennon singing a protest song should not have come as much of a surprise. The big shock was when Paul McCartney, who had very much steered clear of major political issues, decided to write his own song about Bloody Sunday. And it was Paul, not John, who caused the bigger storm. Just like John, Paul started his own band with his wife after the Beatles broke up called Wings. In his 2021 book, The Lyrics, Paul explained where he was when he heard about Bloody Sunday. "I was in New York that day, having met with John the day before. It was a meeting at which we, more or less, agreed to stop sniping at each other. With John and Paul, we see two common perspectives from British people about Bloody Sunday and perhaps other conflicts. John was politically left-wing and anti-war and against the British Army in its entirety. Paul, meanwhile, felt that the British Army on this occasion had deeply let themselves down. According to Paul, it was deeply troubling to me to see footage of a perfectly peaceful demonstration that had gone wrong. It looked as if our army boys had acted indiscriminately and fired on innocent people. There was immediately a cover-up claiming that the protesters weren't innocent but had rifles, but it seemed to me to be a reasonable demonstration, the kind that had been happening in black communities throughout recent history. And Paul began to sympathise with the children of Northern Ireland, who were growing up with soldiers policing their streets. Then I imagined Irish soldiers on the streets of Liverpool when I was growing up, telling me I couldn't go here or I couldn't go there. In response to the thoughts and feelings swimming through his head, he came up with a song that was unambiguously titled Give Ireland Back to the Irish. The song opens with the chorus, "Give Ireland back to the Irish, don't make them have to take it away. Give Ireland back to the Irish, make Ireland Irish today." This was an incredibly sensitive time to speak publicly about the Troubles, and the song was not something that his record company, EMI, was comfortable releasing. And Joseph Lockwood, the owner of the record label at the time, strongly advised against releasing this song. According to Paul, "I told him this particular event had affected me very deeply, and I felt I must respond to it. He asked me to reconsider. So I gave it a couple of days and rang back, and I said I had to put it out. He said the record would be banned by the BBC and no good would come of it for me. I told him I didn't care." Paul was one of the few people who had the leverage to force EMI to release this type of song, and its impact was immediate. Paul McCartney had just released a song called Give Ireland Back to the Irish, and a heavy backlash ensued. I don't think I'll get much pushback from saying that this song is not McCartney's greatest effort, but in many ways, this was not the point. At the time, spreading the word was the most important thing, and as a former Beatle, he had a bigger soapbox than most. EMI turned out to be right, and the song was banned by broadcasting authorities across the UK. Even Radio Luxembourg, a popular pirate station not subject to broadcasting regulations, refused to play it. When reading out the songs in the charts, one BBC presenter refused to give the name of the song and simply referred to it as a record by the group Wings. The BBC said in a statement, "We will not be playing this record because we feel the lyrics adopt a definite standpoint on the Northern Ireland situation and are therefore politically controversial." To counteract this ban, McCartney tried to buy commercial airtime, but every regulator refused to permit it. The song charted at number 16 in Britain and 21 in the United States. Unsurprisingly, however, the song reached number 1 in the Republic of Ireland. But, surprisingly, it was also number 1 in Spain. The track was particularly popular among the Basque community, who wanted to be separate from Spain, and they saw parallels between what was happening in Ireland and what was happening in their own community. The reason why broadcasters banned the song was not merely political censorship. It was an incredibly sensitive time where showing any opinions about the Troubles could result in violence. And sadly, a violent incident did happen as a result of Give Ireland Back to the Irish. Playing guitar for Wings was Henry McCullough, who grew up in Portstewart, a town about an hour away from Derry. The message of Give Ireland Back to the Irish was complicated by the fact that Henry came from a Unionist, or Protestant, background. He came from a background of people who saw themselves as British and wanted Northern Ireland to remain a part of the United Kingdom. The Unionist community were not immune from incidences of violence either. Quite the opposite, in fact. 6 weeks before Bloody Sunday, the IRA bombed a furniture store in a Unionist area on the Shankill Road, where 4 civilians were killed, 2 of which were babies. This attack was a response to a separate attack on Catholic civilians, and it seemed as if there was a never-ending cycle of violence. Despite coming from this background, Henry agreed to perform the song. But sadly, his brother was attacked because of his association with the song, and was apparently hit over the head with a glass bottle when out in a pub one night, allegedly because of his brother's association with the song. From what I can gather, Henry did not seem to want to get involved, and it's hard to find out his own political leanings, if any. The only thing he said about the song was, "I knew it would cause a little bit of a fuss." And he was right. Speaking about Henry, Paul said, "Henry was Protestant, so some people were a bit upset by his involvement in this song. Then there were others who perceived the song as a rallying cry for the IRA. It certainly wasn't written to be one. For better or worse, this was a moment where I had a sense that art could and should respond to a situation." In the meantime, John Lennon had been penning his song about the incident, and a second song by a Beatle about Bloody Sunday was about to be released. John's song, Sunday Bloody Sunday, came out that summer, and much like Paul, John did not sit on the fence. And again, like Paul, John was accused of promoting propaganda for the IRA. The song opens with the lyrics, "Well, it was Sunday, Bloody Sunday, when they shot the people there. The cries of 13 martyrs filled the free Derry air." And just like Give Ireland Back to the Irish, there is a certain tone of the song that shifts from protesting the crimes of Bloody Sunday to Lennon siding with the Irish Republican movement in general. We see this with the lyrics, "How dare you hold to ransom a people proud and free, keep Ireland for the Irish, put the English back to sea." Responding to his critics, John said, "Here I am in New York and I hear about the 13 people shot dead in Ireland, and I react immediately. My songs are not there to be digested and pulled apart like the Mona Lisa. If people on the street think about it, that's all there is to it." John's viewpoint was seen as curious by many, as Lennon had a family member who experienced the uglier side of the Irish Republican movement. In 1939, John's mother, Julia, was working as an usher at the Trocadero Cinema in Liverpool when a bomb went off which had been planted by the IRA. Thankfully, she was unharmed by the incident. Lennon's Sunday Bloody Sunday was not broadcast in the UK either. However, this was not released as a single, but appeared on the album Sometime in New York City, as did The Luck of the Irish. Lennon also donated the royalties from both of these songs to the civil rights movement in Northern Ireland. And here is why they have been largely forgotten. Give Ireland Back to the Irish was a hastily released single that did not make it onto any albums, and both of John's songs appeared on one of his least popular LPs. Sometime in New York City was a double album which peaked at number 11 in the UK charts and number 48 in the US. And so the song Sunday Bloody Sunday had fallen somewhat beyond the radar. All 3 songs are in the dusty lower echelons of Lennon and McCartney's extensive catalogues, and the song mostly associated with Bloody Sunday is the 1983 song by U2. Songs like these helped spread awareness of what was going on at the time, but ultimately, the Troubles would not come to an end until decades later. In 1998, the Nobel Peace Prize winning Good Friday Agreement was signed. It was a coming together from both sides, and to paraphrase a much more popular John Lennon protest song, they decided to give peace a chance. Thanks for watching.